Thank you for watching Scary Bear Attacks. If you like this episode, please remember to hit the like button and leave a comment or two, then subscribe and click on the bell to receive notifications of whenever we release new videos. Also, please remember to share them to your social media. Welcome back to Scary Bear Attacks. Today's episode takes us to Muddy Creek Trail, just northwest of a ranching area in western Montana called Blackleaf. The dot of a town called Choteau is the nearest reference point on a map. Other than that, the high plains is dotted with sprawling ranches and agricultural enclaves surrounded by amazing views and wilderness. The eastern slope of the Rocky Mountains tower above the horizon to nearly 8,000 feet in elevation, as the terrain slopes to around 5,000 feet on the plains below. Up Muddy Creek is an access road that leads up to forested mountains covered in pine, fir, and spruce stands that wrap around the granite peaks like a shroud. The riparian zones which grow along the creek beds are thick with willow and berry bushes, so much so the animals hiding in them don't move unless you practically step on them. The browsers and grazers here include elk, moose, and deer, with antelope prancing across the plains. The predators in this area include black bears, bobcats, cougars, and coyotes. Without any doubt, the most dominant predator here is the growing population of grizzly bears. Chase Delwo was a 26-year-old son of a rancher. He grew up on a cattle ranch just west of Bynum, near an area known as Blackleaf. When he was a child, he attended Bynum Elementary School, which had big windows that faced west and showcased the beautiful view of the nearby mountains. Chase and his schoolmates would occasionally watch grizzly bears graze their way across these mountains from the safety of their school. After graduating from Choteau High School in 2007, Chase immediately pursued his electrician's license. He loved the outdoors and was an avid bowhunter, with his favorite quarry to pursue being the numerous elk of the area. Now, over the years, Chase had had his run-ins with bears. He'd even been charged by them on occasion, but each time the bear had stopped and diverted its path, leaving him scared but safe. He knew they could be dangerous, and even deadly, but generally meant no harm to people. On Saturday, October 3rd, 2015, Chase and his 30-year-old brother Shane had planned to go elk hunting with their bows up Muddy Creek Road. The wind howled to gusts of over 30 miles per hour and drove the rain and snow sideways, making it difficult to keep dry and warm. The brothers were not carrying bear spray, not that it would have done any good in weather like this. They felt assured of their safety, though, as this area was practically their backyard, and they knew it like the back of their hands. They were decked out in full-body camouflage so that they would blend into their environment better, but would not use elk urine to hide their scent as the weather was far too windy and wet to carry it far anyway. Just after sunup, around 7 a.m., the young men arrived at the bottom of Muddy Creek. It didn't take long for them to spot a herd of elk a few hundred yards away to the west of their truck. The brothers examined the terrain and formulated a plan to stalk the herd. Chase would hike along the creek bed to the east of the herd, while Shane would hike up a ridge to their west. This pincer kind of strategy is intended to create opportunities for at least one of the hunters to get a shot. Chase would essentially hike into position, then move toward the herd, in effect driving them toward his brother, who would be waiting in ambush along the herd's expected escape route. After ironing out the details of their plan, the brothers left their truck and began hiking toward their starting positions. The raging wind battered the willows around Chase as he pushed his way through them along the creek bed. The willow stands were so thick in places that he had to crawl between tangled gaps just to get past. As Chase scrambled and crawled through the tangled undergrowth, he heard the high-pitched scream of a large herd bull elk on the ridge above him. This bull had to be only 100 yards or so from him, and its bugle charged the bowhunter with excitement. As he continued to hike up the creek bed, Chase's gaze drifted up the ridge in search of the source of the high-pitched bugle. As Chase scanned the hillside, he pulled an arrow from his quiver and nocked it, which means he placed it on his bowstring. Bowhunters frequently do this when they expect to get a shot soon, as retrieving the arrow from the quiver and placing the nock of the arrow on the string forces a bowhunter to divert their vision momentarily. Taking your eye off of your quarry frequently results in losing sight of it, and could blow your chances of getting a shot on it. As Chase rounded a willow bush, he glanced over to a dark mound that had suddenly come into view. His terror shot up as soon as he realized this dark mound was a huge grizzly bear that was sleeping. Note, I said was sleeping. By the time Chase and the grizzly could process what was going on, the bowhunter had inadvertently walked right up to the dozing 400-pound Bruin. The grizzly was laying on its belly and facing away from Chase. The distance between them was about 3 feet and was danger close, as each of them would agree. The bowhunter knew he was practically defenseless, and how this confrontation would play out was completely up to the bear. It would hopefully dash off and not attack him, but the alternative was also possible. Chase took 2 or 3 steps back from the bear, and that is when the grizzly realized he was there. With a large bark, the giant bear swapped ends and instantly put the bowhunter on his back. Startling a grizzly bear is kind of like inviting a dangerous murderer over for dinner. They aren't known for gently waving off misunderstandings. This bear immediately locked its enormous jaws around Chase's face and tore through the young man's flesh. Chase could hear the bear's teeth grating against his skull, but was powerless to resist the overwhelming mass and strength of the grizzly. Now at the mercy and fury of the startled grizzly, Chase felt his skull cracking near his left temple. If this portion of his skull gave way to the bear's teeth, shards of his bones would be pushed into his brain, likely killing him quickly. Once Chase was incapacitated, the grizzly relented, likely thinking it had killed this threat to its existence. The Bruin released its jaws from Chase's head and watched him for signs of life. Still confused and charged with adrenaline, Chase sat up and looked around briefly. He could see the bear a mere few feet from him, watching him. Seeing the man moving was all the bear needed to return to finish him off. The grizzly once again pounced on Chase. This time it drove its canines through the flesh of his leg and punched giant holes deep into his muscles. As it shook its head, it tossed the bowhunter around violently, which put him once again flat on his back. From there the grizzly moved its gaping mouth toward Chase's face to bring an end to this fight. It was at that moment that Chase thought of a lesson from his grandfather. He recalled a discussion the two had had about an article which indicated that bears had a strong gag reflex when anything was unexpectedly shoved into their mouths. Think about how a person reacts when an insect mistakenly flies into their mouth. Bears similarly cough and gag and try to spit out whatever it is that's irritating their throat. With this information flashing through his mind, Chase quickly extended his right arm toward the grizzly's mouth as it came toward him. He plunged his hand right past the bear's giant teeth and as far down its throat as he could. This took the bear completely by surprise, and at first it tried to bite Chase's arm. The discomfort of having a human hand shoved down its throat caused the bear to gag and heave. It shook its head back and forth, trying to dislodge Chase's arm from its mouth. After only a few seconds, the bear was able to shake the bowhunter's hand loose. It quickly took a few steps back to reassess what had just happened. It apparently had had enough of Chase, and dashed off toward the east. Chase wasn't sure just where he was, but knew which direction the bear had gone, and he went the opposite way. Scrambling and clawing his way through the brush, he pulled his cell phone from his pocket and quickly dialed his brother. As he watched the screen of his phone, he felt his blood trickling down his cheek and onto his clothes. He could feel the left portion of his scalp dangling down over his face, obstructing the vision of his left eye. As he parted the brush, trying to put distance between himself and the bear, Chase glanced up the hill. He could see that huge 6-point bull elk a short distance away. He knew his elk hunting was over for the time being, and disappointedly continued to call out for Shane. As he climbed the hill, Chase knew he had to calm himself. He was huffing and puffing from the exertion and terror of the grizzly attack. His eyes searched the terrain for the most likely place his brother would be. After walking a few hundred yards, he'd finally located Shane. As he approached his brother, Chase hefted his bow above his head and waved it to draw his brother's attention. Shane optimistically took this as a sign of success and briefly thought his brother had bagged an elk. As Chase approached him, the stark reality of what had actually happened made his heart sink. Judging by the look on his brother's face, Chase knew he didn't look too good. Shane somehow kept his composure and reassured his brother that it would be okay as he worked to stop the bleeding from the huge gashes on Chase's face. Shane used his cell phone to call Benfis, Teton Medical Center, a few miles away in Choteau. He told them they were about 33 miles away and he would be arriving soon with a grizzly mauling victim, so please be ready. Upon arriving back at their truck, Shane assisted his brother into the passenger side and jumped behind the wheel. Chase later described the 20 minutes it took the brothers to cover the 33 miles as driving too fast for the dirt roads. Back at the hospital, the trauma team was notified of the brothers' arrival. They were ready and waiting as soon as the young men pulled into the hospital parking lot and quickly wheeled Chase inside. After handing his brother off to the medical staff, Shane called Becca, Chase's wife. On most hunting trips, she would accompany her husband, but on this one, she'd stayed home. She drove to the hospital to be by her husband's side. The medical team immediately started to clean and suture Chase's wounds. He was soon transported by ambulance to Benfis Hospital in Great Falls for more intensive care. They placed hundreds of stitches as they pulled closed enormous gashes in his cheek and replaced his tattered scalp. For 5.5 hours, they worked on repairing the damage the grizzly had done to Chase's face. The bear's canines had punched deep holes into the flesh of his legs, but they could not be stitched closed. Those wounds needed to be left open in order to push out any infection that may develop, and instead were bandaged. Despite his numerous wounds, scrapes, and bruises, Chase was thankful to the medical staff and their excellent treatment they provided him. Following his surprise attack, Chase indicated that he will never again go into dense brush by himself, no matter what. Chase stated that everybody needed to take grizzlies more seriously, citing that Choteau Public Schools had recently shut down recess due to a grizzly wandering just west of the playground. The school children also reported seeing a grizzly near their bus stop the fall following Chase's attack. He concludes by stating that it was a good thing that it was him and not a 10-year-old kid that was attacked. Chase also put forth the idea that the grizzly management specialist from the Montana Fish and Game spend some time each fall in area schools, discussing how to handle grizzlies and prevent confrontations with them. Chase held no malice toward the bear, given it was merely sleeping, and seemed to be just as afraid of him as he was of it. Grizzly populations along the Continental Divide ecosystem are estimated to be around 1,000 bears and dwindle a bit along the eastern slope of the Rocky Mountain front. A balance of mutual respect and avoidance is being sought through education of area residents. In 2015, wild chokecherry and thorny buffalo berry yields had completely failed, driving the hungry bears to invade grain silos in search of food needed to fatten up for hibernation. As you look over the terrain around Choteau, I'm sure you'll conclude the same thing I did. The patchwork of fields and flat open land do not seem like prime grizzly territory. Grizzlies have started to move into the plains areas to feed off of grains grown there. They hole up to sleep during the daytime along the creeks in daybeds concealed by the dense brush, emerging at night to feed. That means unassuming bird hunters are beginning to find themselves face to face with grizzlies who are desperate and hungry. After reviewing the facts surrounding this episode, I have a few questions for you. Given the area grizzlies have taken up daybeds along creeks, how do you think people can avoid surprising them? Could this attack have been avoided by waiting until clearer weather prevailed? Are you surprised that grizzly attacked Chase instead of dashing off to safety? What would you do if a person crept up on you while you slept? I'd likely freak out and bite them too. I'll gladly read and respond to your thoughts, so please post them in the comments section below, and let's talk about it. Thank you for watching Scary Bear Attacks. If you've enjoyed this episode, please consider clicking on the like button and clicking on the bell icon. We'll help you know when we post our new episodes. Posting our video links to your social media profiles furthers awareness, and it's fun. We slashed our prices in our merch store, linked below, so check out the bargains there while you shop. As a member of our human community, remember to adventure bravely and be careful out there, especially in bear country.